So in this segment, we're going to be talking about how the government is actually ignoring scientists and trying to do their own thing and trying to balance it with the economy. I think does it have that quote here in this article? Yeah, there it is. There. All right, cool. So we're just gonna before we start this bit of the story, I want to add the fact that Chris Whitty is not confident that top tier lockdown restrictions will work purely because these alone are not enough. You need test and trace and all that other stuff, and test and trace isn't working. You need mass testing. We don't have good enough testing, as evidenced by the fact that, as Chris Whitty points out, that none of the areas in special measures, I think apart from one or two, have actually come out, and that's because you're stopping the spread partially, but you don't know who's actually got the illness. That the fact that sick pay isn't enough. So what that means is people who should really get tested won't get tested because they know that if they test positive, they're going to have to self isolate for 2 weeks, and that means they're not going to get that much money. I think the government has only offered like £500 a week or something like that, which isn't nowhere near. Is it £500 a week? It might be £500 for the 2 weeks or something like that. I can't remember what the exact number was. It's not enough. What the government's offered, statutory sick pay is not enough, and that's why some of the people who need to get tested, who should really get tested, don't want to get tested because they know that if they get tested and they're positive, they won't be able to afford a lockdown. So here, the government's scientific advisors called for short lockdown in England to halt the spread of COVID-19 last month. New released documents have showed the experts said that immediate circuit breaker was the only way to control the cases at a meeting on the 21st of September. So, this video is going out today. The 21st of September that's about just over 3 weeks ago. Just over 3 weeks ago, the government were told they needed to go into lockdown, and here we are. Should we have a look at the numbers again, according to the FT? Let's have a look. Once it loads, let's have a look. That's us, Not. We're just below France, but we are one of the highest cases per million in Europe. That's us. So the scientists are screaming at the government. The government don't care because they want to balance it with the economy. So now, instead of going to lockdown 3 weeks ago and actually dealing with the issue, what we have is a stricter lockdown potentially now, and more damage done to the economy. So well done. The country that wanted to put the economy first is doing the worst economically. The irony. So Labour has described the documents as alarming. Probably think for some more words for that. It comes as the Liverpool region entered a very high COVID alert level. That can only mean one thing. The highest level of the new three-tier system for coronavirus restrictions in England. Every area will be classified as being on medium, high, or very high alert. Under the system, it is not clear which specific criteria is for each level. I think the government did actually unveil it. When was this article written? 9 minutes ago. I think the government did actually unveil it, so this will probably need updating at some point in the article. Meanwhile, the latest ONS figures showed that deaths are doubling every fortnight in the UK. So anyone who doesn't know what a fortnight is, it's every 2 weeks. Because it took me a while to actually find out what that means, because it's not a word like non-English people use a lot. At a press conference on Monday, Prime Minister Boris Johnson said the alert system in England could succeed in driving down cases if it was implemented very effectively, and he rejected the extreme route of a full nationwide lockdown right now. But at the same briefing, England's chief medical officer, Professor Chris Whitty, voiced concerns over the impact of the new rule, saying he was not confident the base measures in the highest tier would be enough to get on top of the virus. That's why there's a lot of flexibility for local authorities to do significantly more, he said. And I think that, honestly, without test and trace and without having proper sick pay, this issue will stay as is. I think people will not... the people who should get tested, I'm not blaming them by any stretch, because if you can't afford to live, then that's a systemic failure. So people not wanting to get tested because they know they won't be able to afford a lockdown because they have no savings. That's a failure of the system. If the government actually helped these people, then you would get better results. But the government don't understand that. Sage papers released shortly after Monday's press conference, minutes from the Sage meeting of the SAGE Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies, which feeds into the UK government, decided making stated the advisors have called for the immediate introduction of a short national lockdown 3 weeks. So I don't think we need a national lockdown. I'm not an expert on the matter, but I think certain areas definitely do need lockdowns, because where I live, it's not too bad. If we went to lockdown, it'd be kind of pointless. The papers also show the scientists suggesting banning all contact inside homes with members of other households, closing all bars, restaurants, indoor gyms, and hairdressers, requiring all university and college teaching to take place online. And SAGE have also pushed for the fact that schools and pubs have to close to stop the spread. And the thing is, when the government said they wanted to reopen schools, the scientists said that something else has to give, something else has to close in order to stop parts of the spread. But the government didn't listen, as always. Speaking to BBC Breakfast, Robert Jenrick said the government had introduced measures such as the Rule of Six and stressed SAGE papers had contributed to the measures the PM announced on Monday. But you've done it 3 weeks later. You've done it 3 weeks too late. He said that they had taken balanced judgments that weighed up the effects on the economy. And the thing is, this government are obsessed with the economy to the point where they will put it first and if you do that, then COVID runs rampant. And then you have to do tighter lockdowns, which impacts the economy even more. That's what these idiots don't understand. The fact is, you have to put the virus first and everything comes second. So if an area has high COVID rates and needs to be locked down, then lock it down, because then you can bring it out of lockdown quicker and therefore the economy recovers. It's just stressing me out here, the fact that people don't understand this yet. The government don't understand this. And fix track and trace, you bozo. We're going to do a separate story about how the government have wasted billions on track and trace when Ireland spend 770 million euros a year and their system seems to be working fine. Ours isn't. On the new 3-tier system, we are now able to have very clear. Do we talk about this stuff? He later told Radio 4's program, this is generic, and that there were no plans for other parts of the country to go into the highest tier this week, but plans would be kept under review. Don't know what that sound effect was there. Labour Shadow Health Secretary John Ashworth said that he was alarmed by the SAGE papers and called for minister to explain why the advice was rejected. I think you got to start calling Matt Hancock to give statements to the House about what's going on, and he needs to be dragged in front of select committees asking why you're not listening to the scientists for. Why, when you say we're listening to the science, you're not listening to the science? That's the question I would ask them. Who are these scientists they're listening to? Dr. Banana. He also insisted the government was going to go further than the latest measure, saying that they were getting really serious as winter approaches. If you're getting really serious now, I question what you've been doing for the last year. I really do. Have you been going on easy mode? Are you like Goku when he first meets an enemy? You're just testing it out, seeing how strong the virus is. Absolute morons. So we've got some James Gallagher analysis. That's what he's got to say. Cases are increasing across the whole country, and the number of people in hospital is now higher than before the full lockdown in March. We are at a critical stage in the epidemic. In the second wave, is at this moment the gulf between the official scientific advice and the decision made by government have been laid bare, and that's true. You can see what the advice of the SAGE scientists are 3 weeks ago, and we can see what the government did since then, which is they've only just implemented a lockdown in certain areas. It is the case that advisors advise and ministers decide when considering new measures to stop COVID. Government must also take into account the harms that they cause to our health and economy. But there is also concern of the government doing too little too late, and that we can decide to choose for controlling the virus now or wait for the virus to force a hand as it did in March. And that's phenomenal analysis. I think that's really great. The fact that is that the virus has forced the government to make a decision here. And the government have been forced to go into a lockdown rather than going to lockdown 3 weeks ago, having, the facilities in place and doing an 80% furlough. They're haggling, saying they want to do a 66%, furlough to pay money, only 2/3 compared to the 80% that was before. They're haggling over money here when had they done a lockdown earlier, then Liverpool and these other places can come out of a lockdown quicker because the virus spread is shorter because you're actually dealing with things. But no, you morons don't understand that. The newly released SAGE documents also showed advisors said the NHS track and trace system was only having a marginal impact. This is the thing they spent £12 billion on, is having a marginal impact. And this would likely decline further unless the system expanded to keep up with the rising cases and people were given the support to enable them to self-isolate. So this is what I was saying before about, sick pay and all that stuff. The fact is they've spent £12 billion on this thing and it doesn't work. The only guy I've seen to waste more money than this is Ed Woodward. That's it. They're the two people I've seen that can only waste money like this. This Conservative government, who are meant to be good with the economy and good with money, and Ed Woodward. A separate document from the 17th of September showed that SAGE believed curfews in bars and pubs, cafes, also likely to have a marginal impact. I think, in all honesty, I think they're making things worse because you have a rush of people going out and hitting, public and private transport at the same time. It doesn't make sense. A 10 p.m. closing time was introduced for all hospitality venues in England. The SAGE document from the 21st warned that single interventions by themselves are unlikely to bring the R rate below 1, and both local and national measures are needed. However, a document examining measures including 2 or 3 circuit breaker, a short period of tightened restrictions, said this step, if it was as strict as well adhered to the restrictions in late May, could put the epidemic back by approximately 28 days or more. Multiple circuit breakers might be necessary to maintain the low levels of incidence. The problem is, I think people are getting COVID fatigue because they keep hearing about local lockdowns and things not working when, I do my best to follow the rules as best I can, just as I hope you do as well. But the fact is, people are, struggling here mentally and financially, as well as physically to an extent. And, the fact that the government's constantly, haggling and waiting over lockdowns isn't making things easier. The hospitality sector, God knows how many, places are going to survive this, and what, the long-term impacts of, these shutdowns are, these small independent places especially. Who knows? I'm especially scared about what's going on, and I just don't know, man. Continuing, most areas in England are in the medium alert level, meaning current restrictions continue, including the 10 p.m. hospitality curfew and the rule of 6, which, okay. Areas already under local restrictions are automatically in the high alert level, meaning bans on household mixing indoors are extended to include hospitality venues. This is stuff we know. Look, the daily deaths are gradually rising, so you can see here it dipped massively, and now it's come back up. Meanwhile, the Scottish Government is drawing its own 3-tier framework, which is probably going to be better than ours, to be fair, to be implemented later this month. In Wales, a second national lockdown is being considered, and First Minister Mark Drakeford, what a cool name, has threatened a travel ban on people from English COVID hotspots if the Prime Minister does not impose his own. What we can see from this is that the government are not following the science. That's the top and bottom of it. The systems that they put in are failing. They've made things worse with the 10 p.m. thing. So by them trying to intervene minimally, they've made things worse. And I don't know what more to say about this. But, you can probably hear it in my voice. I'm just getting sick of all of this nonsense. They wasted £12 billion on track and trace, which doesn't work. They haven't got money. They're claiming they don't have money for furlough, but they've got money to waste on Serco and the boys. Money to waste on Dido Harding, and I'm just getting sick of it. We're going to be doing a story soon about the corruption and incompetence of the government and how much taxpayer money they've wasted. But yeah, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.